Trailer is not a safe place to be, and this photo is evidence of that, right, Byron?
Yeah, and we emphasize manufactured homes are not safe places, and you see the insulation here. And as we understand it, hopefully everybody is all right there, but we're seeing a lot of damage that once the National Weather Service goes out and surveys, they're indicating we're seeing tornado-like damage overall. But keep in mind, we have these high wind warnings now, so the worst isn't over. Of course, Jeff's been tracking that tornado warning up towards Ferdinand. We're trying to verify there, but you need to stay in your tornado-safe shelter.
This was taken in Seabury, Kentucky as well. Back to you, Jeff.
Okay, thanks a lot, Byron and Caroline. Byron working a long day today, and we have a little bit longer to go here with this tornado warning in Du Bois County. Let's zoom in first of all on the areas that are at greatest risk here, and just to give you the update here, that warning is going to go until 2:45, which would be 1:45 Central Time there for the eastern corner of Du Bois County. It does include Ferdinand in Du Bois County. Let's zoom in first of all on the areas that are at greatest risk here, and just to give you the update here, that warning is going to go until 2:45, which would be 1:45 Central Time there for the eastern corner of Du Bois County. It does include Ferdinand, Birdseye, and then right up 162 there in the eastern part of the county. And also just a little sliver here, mainly the Hoosier National Forest, but also St. Meinrad, St. Croix are right up here along State Road 62 there in northern Perry County. So if you're in those areas, that's who the warning is for, although most of that wind has started to lift north of I-64. So we just have to hang in here a little bit longer. Jasper kind of on the edge of this strongest wind. Right now it's showing up strongest here around Ferdinand, and then back up to the north of Ferdinand here as you go out toward the lake up there, Patoka Lake, and that area, which would be in the northern part of the county. But even though we're showing you these numbers, as we've seen with the damage pictures today, a lot of this can just spin up and you can get intense winds that won't necessarily show on the radar in the environment that we're in today. We have more pictures, it looks like, from the church, so let's go back over now to Byron and Caroline.
Yeah, Jeff, these were sent in the last 14 minutes. So again, we showed you earlier the roof of this church, and this is St. Joe and Wendell where this church is located. It has been blown off, and there's that better image for you of the roof no longer there. You can see very extensive damage, and our Jordan Yaney is actually heading towards that church right now, and we're going to toss to him in the 14 First Alert Interceptor.
Yeah, Caroline, we are headed to that church. We are about 7 minutes away right now. We're heading north on 66 right now. Just wanted to say that we have seen a lot of trees split at the trunk. They're not blown over and uprooted from the soft ground. These trees are split near the trunk from those high winds. There's a lot of tree limbs on the ground. In some cases, as we showed you earlier, there are trees on the road. There's power lines down. So just be careful and do not touch any power lines that you see. But we are heading to that church, and hopefully we can give you a better view of that damage, and hopefully everybody there is okay. Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Jordan, for that update, and be careful out there as you head into northern Vanderburgh County there to St. Joe in the County Catholic Church and the damage there. Our strongest wind field continues to move there to the north of now Ferdinand and Birdseye, and will continue moving on up and out of the tri-state. The rest of the region is in the clear, but as we've emphasized here, hopefully you're understanding, it's going to be windy until that low pressure gets all the way through and well away from the tri-state. We're still going to be dealing with potentially damaging winds, and you know, with the ground already soaked with what we've had, like 2.5, 3 inches of rain today, it's pretty easy for damage to occur. And Arden's going to kind of fill us in on those hazards. So we're going to go back to Arden now in the Weather Center.
Yeah, obviously we want to, give a lot of focus to those severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. That's an immediate concern, but I also don't the wind risk that we are still at across the rest of the tri-state. There is that high wind warning in place until 9 o'clock tonight, and we actually did just receive a spotter report just at, they said this was taken at 1:15, So at 1:15, there was a spotter that measured a gust in Madisonville of 62 miles an hour. So that was just 5-10 minutes ago, they were having gusts of 62 miles an hour in Madisonville, and we're seeing that across much of our region as these storms are working their way off to the northeast now. Behind this, we still have the strong winds from that low pressure system where we are seeing sustained winds upwards of 20, 30, or even 40 miles an hour, and these gusts upwards of 40, 50, and as I just mentioned, we had one measurement in Madisonville of 62 miles an hour. So especially with some of those trees potentially already weakened from the storms that have moved through, I would not be surprised if we did still see some additional wind damage as we go through the next couple of hours. As Jeff mentioned, although the storms are moving out, the wind damage threat is still not completely over here in the tri-state.
That's a good point, Arden. Of course, the threshold for a severe thunderstorm warning to be issued is around 60, 59 mile per hour winds and higher, and we're getting those without a thunderstorm now, so definitely damaging winds. And as Arden told you, the threshold for damage is a little bit lower now because we already have some trees and things that have been weakened by the first round of storms. The ground is very wet, so it's easier for trees to uproot. So lots of concerns. Let's go back over now to Byron and Caroline at the analysis area.
And Jeff, this one was sent to us 25 minutes ago from Dylan in Owensboro. Let's chat about this one, Byron. What is this showing you
Plus,
here?
Ragu Drive is a busy area in Owensboro. Now we had, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain. So you see these utility poles, they're easy to get knocked down with these high winds environments. So I'm not saying that it's tornadic-like winds there, but that's why we just say even during a severe thunderstorm or a tornado warning, they had several severe thunderstorm warnings in Owensboro and Davis County. Just not safe to be in your car. We appreciate viewers sharing the perspective here. But I think a lot of this has to do with the rain and the high winds out there. And it's where the higher winds are up, you go up 30, 40, 50 feet. And it's pushing that pole over towards the roadway there. And by the way, it's just human nature. Folks are going to want to stay off the roadways out towards St. Joe to go out and look at this. There could still be power lines down, nails, debris out there. So Jeff and Arden will tell you a lot of times there's injuries happen when folks are just out looking, and it's just human nature, but just be careful. And plus we have these high wind warnings. A lot of times we can give the all clear after severe weather, and we're seeing these pictures of the flooding with all this rain that we've had here that can snap trees even absent any severe thunderstorms.
Yeah, let's take just a couple of minutes to go through those pictures. They kind of whiz by in a hurry just to give us a perspective. Just slow down there. Just start at West Louisville, and what are we seeing in each one?
This is out in West Louisville, Sargo, Western Davis County there, Trampoline, and those can get moved with 30, 40 mile an hour winds. And this is what we talked about. The trees are still pretty much dormant during this time of the year. With all this rain, see the tree, you can learn a lot from the picture here. It gets knocked down, and then look at all the rainwater underneath that from all the rain that we picked up. With virtually every county was under a flash flood warning this morning, so you get this flying debris. This is not necessarily a tornadic or even severe thunderstorms. It's just flat out the wind that's causing this damage.
Yeah, and here's some more flooding video. This was earlier this morning, but this one is in Slaughters, Kentucky. Again, a lot of roads this morning just not safe to drive on, Byron.
Yeah, and Slaughters is one of our areas that's susceptible to flooding. Then taking a look here at Fort Branch, get some interesting looking cloud formations. And we talked even starting yesterday, then on 14 News Sunrise, that it's going to be difficult to see because things are going to be rain wrapped. And then you can see the flooding there. Whoa, and so I don't know what we're seeing there, but it appears to be some damage there in Fort Branch. So we'll have to take a look at that picture. And this is this is in another car, and I'll let you. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, this one is. It says it's heading towards Nashville, Tennessee, Byron, on Highway 41 in Kentucky.
So it knocked out. So the winds there. It looks like it's flipped a vehicle there, or perhaps a semi there. So that's the second one that we've seen. So, and we talked about these are roads, especially interstates, US 41, interstates especially, and US highways. They're elevated a bit and they're susceptible to the wind.
At that church where that storm damage is, that's where 14 First Alert Interceptor is out, and our Jordan Yaney is. So let's get a look at what damage we're seeing near the church there.
Well, we know we have damage to
Yeah,
the
hey,
rooftop
Caroline.
there, and that might have been just with the, as we take a look here.
I think Jordan is on. Jordan, are you on too? Yeah, he's coming up.
Yeah,
Looks like
I
he's
am.
coming
We
up.
are actually coming up St. Joseph Avenue right now, and this entire top of this church is gone right here. There's a lot of first responders here right now, but I'm trying to give you the best view I can from the top of our interceptor. We're gonna have to turn a little bit and get off the road.
Yeah.
I'll try to turn the camera with you, but the entire top of that roof is gone.
Yeah, that would be St. Joe Road. He's come in from the west there, so he's going around the cemetery at St. Joe. This is St. Joe in the County Catholic Church, which lost its roof with an observed tornado. We had German Township. We don't know exactly who in German Township reported that, but the firehouse is just down the road from where this church is. And then you see an elementary school there. Not sure how many kids go there. It's a couple hundred. It's a big school. It doesn't look like the school sustained damage, at least just a quick look. But you see folks out here. I'm sure they're going to be challenged here. They probably don't want them driving around the school right now, understandably. But that is an old church. I've seen the date carved on it before, and I ride my bike out there, but it's at least 100 and some years old. And to lose a roof like that, especially probably a slate roof, you're talking about a lot of wind out there. And we were showing winds back. I'm trying to run back and archive this stuff. We have seen winds of about we were showing 115 in the signature that was moving that way at the time. So that would, and again, we're speculating here, but if that turns out to be a tornado, that would be about an EF1, right? 1 or 2.
And it is encouraging, though,
Yeah.
that Jordan and the Interceptor drove, it was not widespread damage. So sometimes the winds are, you go up 50 or 60 feet or higher as you go up through the thunderstorm. So at least that's encouraging. And we haven't had any reports of any injuries. We'll have to check with the folks in these vehicles on Interstate 64 and US 41. That might be outside of our area, but more damage here as we go out into Yelvington, as you get out into portions there of Davis County. Highway 144 comes to mind. So whatever's there, maybe.
It's a barn, Byron, that's
Wow.
been completely
So it's been
knocked out.
demolished. So we've been doing this long enough that would indicate some high winds and perhaps some definitely tornado-like damage there. It appears to be out in Yelvington. And these areas here are just east of Owensboro.
Okay, let's look at the radar again here, and we are seeing some positive signs, and that is that our wind producing, now severe wind, right? We still have just straight winds out there, but the severe portion of both the tornado warning and the severe thunderstorm warning has begun to trim out of northeastern Du Bois County and Perry County. So as soon as we clear the warnings here, then we will go ahead and throw back to regular programming. We have a lot of information to get through this afternoon and present to you on 14 News at 4. Hopefully you are safe wherever you are, and you can stay with our coverage. Arden has been, of course, looking at a lot more of the reports that are coming in back there. She and Byron do that while I'm over here talking on the radar. So Arden, what do you have now?
Well, I just wanted to mention in the same area that you're highlighting right now, Jeff, as these storms are moving out, the reports are now starting to come in from Spencer and Du Bois counties. We have several reports of trees down in and around Jasper, one out around Ireland, about a half mile outside of Jasper on State Route 56, as well as some large trees down in Jasper around Klemper and 5th Street. And we also had one report that I'm still working to confirm. They didn't have a photo, but someone is saying that there has been another semi-truck blown over on Interstate 64 at the 58-mile marker, which I believe would be around the rest stop there in northern Spencer County. They're sort of between Dale and Ferdinand here on the map. So somewhere right in there on I-64, I believe there may potentially be another semi-truck blown over. So as these storms are moving out, more and more of those reports of wind damage are starting to come in. So if you are starting to venture out around Dale, Ferdinand, Huntingburg, Jasper, all those areas, we are getting a lot of reports of wind damage through there.
Okay, Arden, thanks for that update. Let's clear this information off the screen. I'm going to go back just to reflectivity, and we can show the winds on here like that. And now these are just current winds. This is not going to be your gusts out there, and most of the area has sustained winds. Now, these are, as of the hourly updates, of 30, there's 48 at Madisonville. Again, these are just generic wind, right? Not a gust. 25 out of the south at Evansville, Henderson 39 out of the southwest, Madisonville 48, and they are a little bit closer down and over to the southeast is where you're going to have the strongest winds whipping through this afternoon. And if we go all the way back out to the home view on here, you're going to see all the wind reports from around the tri-state. But the general picture, and this is really a textbook example, the low is right there. It's between Fairfield and the center of it and Mount Carmel. How do I know that? The wind is going in complete different direction. Remember, a low is counterclockwise like that. So it's right in here, right under the low. You're not going to have strong winds. It's always out away from it a little bit. And that is verifying here too as well, where you have a strong wind field coming up, and then it's circulating back around into central Illinois or southern Illinois there between Fairfield and Mount Carmel. We don't know right now, I can't look at it, what the pressure is in that low, but the discussions yesterday were saying this could be one of the lowest pressure readings that we've had on record here in the tri-state. So naturally, we would expect this kind of wind to persist as long as the low is near us. Byron and Caroline have parsed through even more pictures right now. What do you have?
Yeah, Jeff, our Jamie French took this photo for us. This is near Hanson, Kentucky. Another semi down. So now we've seen probably 3 or 4 at least semis flipped over on the interstate. What do you think about this one?
Well, it's north of Madisonville, and I just hope everybody is all right, caused by the winds there and the circulation. So you get these winds. It's the winds that's doing this. And of course, we have these severe thunderstorms. So the winds get underneath the truck and can flip it. And I hope everybody's all right.
Before I toss back to you, Jeff, I want to do a quick update on power outages. Now, the last time we checked in with CenterPoint, they were about 6,000 customers without power. That number has now doubled to nearly 12,000 customers without power. So a lot of people without the lights on right now for CenterPoint Energy. And again, this is spread out all across the tri-state area.
All right, Caroline and Byron, thanks for that update. And again, our strongest thunderstorms now lifting out to the northeast. And as we go back just to reflectivity here, we still have a few active warnings in effect right now for Martin County and then northeastern Du Bois County. I believe that one is going to clear at 1:45. Let's double check. Of course, our tornado warning is prioritized there, so it goes until 1:45. But I think the severe thunderstorm warnings, it's just not going to show that, is it? We'll go this way then, and the severe thunderstorm warning will go until 2 o'clock. So that will be the time that we return to normal programming at 2 o'clock. So everybody knows that's about 20 minutes from now, and we can just continue with your reports from wherever you happen to be watching our coverage from. Again, if you want to share information, there are a couple ways to do it. I'm going to show you how to do it on the 14 First Alert app. Just scroll down to that camera icon and click on Submit Photos. And then the pictures come up in a queue that Caroline and Byron are looking at, and they will come up in the order they are sent. You can also submit pictures on 14news.com. There's a pretty simple way to do that they'll explain in a couple of moments. I'm not sure if our simulcasting is still going out now that the warnings have cleared for the metro area, but just as a note, we typically are simulcast in severe coverage on the stations you see here on the screen: 104 FM WIKY, WFMW, WKTG, and the Cromwell Group are other partners in there for simulcasting. We may have a few showers coming this afternoon. Something else that's kind of counterintuitive, you've seen these trucks flipped over and yet the skies are clear, and that's kind of how it's going to play out here as we move into the afternoon. If we look just at the satellite image here and put a loop on it, we're going to get some clearing or periods of clearing out there. But even with the clear skies, we still anticipate intense winds through at least 5 to 6 o'clock. I think our high wind warning went into the early evening hours. Let's go back over to Byron and Caroline now with some more pictures there.
Yeah, Jeff mentioned another way to upload those photos is to go to 14news.com, click on the menu tab in the top left, and I think it's about the third option down. It says send us your photos and videos. And this one was sent in to us by Amanda in Huntingburg, Indiana, Byron.
Du Bois County looks like the leading edge there. You get these cloud formations along the leading edge, and normally along a gust front they can provide the damaging winds. And so that really, we can learn a lot from that picture. Jeff, myself, Arden have been talking about, you're going to see the highest winds after the rain. So what's causing this trouble on the interstates and these highways is the winds, not necessarily associated with a tornadic or severe thunderstorm. So as Jeff mentioned, it's highly unusual.
It is. It kind of it plays with your mind a little bit, because normally when we have 60, 70 mile an hour winds, there's a big storm with it, and we're getting a storm, but it's kind of invisible in a way, because basically what's going on here is we are taking pressure, basically very low pressure, and it's trying to fill in, which is why the winds, if you look right up here between Mount Carmel and Fairfield, you see the arrows all pointing into the middle, and that's where the low is actually spinning now. Now it's moving too. It'll be moving up toward Terre Haute and then out of the area. The farther away we get from it, then the winds will ease off. But in the short term, we have what we call a tight pressure gradient. So it's like going down a steep hill to fill in that low, and the winds are racing in to do that. And so, yeah, the wind is going to be a problem here. This has basically been a high impact, kind of a 3-chapter event. We've had the rain angle on it, where we had flooding this morning during the morning commute and heavy rainfall across the area, then the severe weather, and finally the intense winds here this afternoon. The good news is we're almost, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. By midnight tonight, we'll be in the clear, and the weekend will provide some quiet weather to get out there and clean up any damage and tree limbs and things that are down. Be careful when you're doing that, of course. There could be nails, as Byron said, power lines and things like that. And that's a good example, too. A down power line is a call to 911. A tree down, unless it's over a road or it's into a house and has caused injuries, is not a call to 911. We need to keep the dispatchers open so they can assist people with emergencies, and that would be, if there's a life-threatening emergency. A power line down would be. A power outage is not. That's a call to your utility company, just trying to take a little heat off of the dispatchers around the tri-state who are working, triple speed right now with everything that's happened. I want to show you just all of the storm reports that have come in, and I'm not going to filter these by tornado, wind, hail, but you can see everybody has had something in their county, whether it was 60-mile-an-hour winds there in Vanderburgh County and higher, 63-mile-an-hour gust in Union County there around Morganfield, Breckenridge Center. And then you have rainfall too, and wind damage. That's what these smaller emblems are: wind damage and flooding. We've had water up to the curb. This is earlier today there in Henderson. So other rainfall reports have come in here now, and they are also pretty impressive. We've had significant flooding along the Anderson River. That would be between Spencer and Perry County. 2.9 inches of rain there. I believe that's by a gauge. 3.6 in Ferdinand. So naturally, we're going to see flooding out there, and that will be an ongoing problem too through tonight and tomorrow. There may be roads that are covered here for a day or two as the water tries to run off, and then secondary to that, we will have rising rivers, especially the Wabash, the White, the Little Wabash, and the Green. The Ohio River will likely jump as well. All right, let's go back over to Caroline and Byron there. More pictures to look at and closer to the station too.
Yeah, Jeff, this one in from Juanita in Owensville. She said she took this about 1:05, Byron.
And there's an interesting cloud to look at. If you can always stay with it for a couple minutes, interested to see if it's rotated. But it is connected, it looks like, to a storm tower, and all the inflows come in the storm. And so that's where the intake and the fuel tanks are with respect to severe weather, and it lifts into a thunderstorm. It's worth keeping an eye on now. That no longer is in that area. It now has cleared. But if you can, if you're out there and you're at a safe vantage point, you can stay with it for a few minutes, but we haven't seen any major damage as of yet. But Jeff has just introduced some reports, but more are going to come in, and perhaps some tornado-like damage. So that's east of Owensville, western sections there of Gibson County, probably between Owensville and Princeton.
All right, thanks for that update. We still have some kind of lingering showers that are going to blow through, but again, just some light to moderate rainfall, really not adding to the heavy stuff that we got earlier today. I think Arden was working on this. I don't want to steal your thunder, Arden, but I'm going to show the cumulative rainfall here for the last 24 hours, and Arden can get into this in a little more detail if she's working on wind, so I'll talk about water. And this is a radar estimate now of how much rain has fallen in different counties here in the tri-state. And as we look at that, when I touch down on here, you're going to see it. Hopefully there, you got 4.5 inches, 4.6 estimated there across central Posey County, up into Gibson, a couple inches of, almost 3 inches of rain. Again, radar estimated 4.5 out there to the west of Owensboro. Yesterday we were saying somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 inches of rain likely, and that has verified. In other words, what we forecast, it did happen across much of the area. There are some portions here of White County that are really waterlogged here, including out to the south of Carmine near Enfield there, Booth Elementary School, 5.1. And we continue to get pictures too from the church out there, from St. Joe and the County Catholic Church. Let's go back over to Caroline and Byron.
Yeah, Jeff, of course you can see here the winds took the roof off of this church, and our Jordan Yaney is now at that church. So let's head over to him. Jordan.
Yeah, Caroline, we are at St. Joseph Catholic Church, and if you look up over my shoulder, that roof is completely gone. We parked the Interceptor at the school and were able to get up here and get a closer look, but I actually want to direct you over here. This is the roof. This is where it blew to, and it's actually by Harry Lincoln's home. We just spoke with Harry. He said fortunately no one was hurt, but he and his wife were inside and they had to duck as they saw this roof coming towards him. He says he's lived here for almost 60 years. This is the church that he went to. This is the house his wife grew up in. They were married in this church, and he says it just looks completely different now. But you'll notice I am standing next to a Vanderbilt County Sheriff's car. That's because this could come down. This steeple, they are worried this steeple could blow down. So this is still an active scene. They're getting some crime scene tape up right now. It could be worse still. They have dismissed the children from the school, but the part of the roof is coming down. You can see some insulation blowing around in there, and they certainly are worried about this steeple because of those high winds.
All right, Jordan, that's a very sad picture there to see. Very old church, and fortunately no one was hurt that we know of. And your point there about the steeple being weakened first by the winds that took the roof off, but sustained winds. Arden Gregory has been analyzing the winds here just in the last hour, and they've jumped, haven't they, Arden?
Yeah, we continue to see these concerning wind speeds across much of the tri-state. And again, these are not thunderstorm winds. The thunderstorms have moved out. This is just sustained winds that we're seeing on the backside of the system now. There is a high wind warning in effect for most of the tri-state through this evening. And right now, we're still seeing gusts upwards of 40, 50, even 60 miles an hour in some parts of the tri-state, especially if you're south of Interstate 64. We are still seeing very strong winds coming in from the southwest in some locations, but then as Jeff mentioned earlier, as those winds then change direction around that low pressure system, others are seeing winds coming from other directions. We continue to see more and more reports of wind damage across our region, even on the backside of these storms, reports of additional trees coming down, power lines, a lot of power poles down across the tri-state right now. So we do have a lot of power outages, and keep in mind, depending on what caused that outage, it may be a while before the lights come back on there, as we are getting pictures of poles completely down in many areas. So it'll take the crews a while to get the power back on in those locations, especially. especially when they're battling these winds as they're trying to return that power.
All right, thanks, Arden. Again, our plan here is to go until 2 o'clock. We're going to join our regular programming at 2 o'clock, right at the top of the hour. We're going to stay with you here. We have more pictures coming in from the interceptor, and we're looking at more images here that you're sending in of your damage around the tri-state. Certainly our biggest and most impactful storm so far this year. If you're driving, especially on an east-west road, you're going to be susceptible to winds blowing your vehicle around or even off the road. This is from one of our directors, Caleb Freeland, who lives up in Pike County. I assume he's either on 69 or 64, but I can read it. 69, okay, by 64 at the intersection there. So you know where those roads come together in northern Vandenberg County. And he has a semi that was blown off the road there, again, by these strong winds, which are coming from the south. So again, if you're oriented east-west, that's when you're going to have the hardest wind against the path you're trying to take. And that is the kind of thing that we're probably going to see more of this afternoon, because we're not done with the high wind portion of this event just yet. There will be continuing high winds that will go here into the next 2 to 3 hours at least, until that low pressure can move on a little farther away from the tri-state. Earlier, the prediction was for that low to pass more toward the Ohio River, but it looked like, in looking at our wind data, it kind of made a turn more to the north here into Edwards and Wabash counties and moved up. And if you're right under that low, the wind's not blowing at all, but it will start to blow then as the low moves away from your location. And I showed this before. These are hourly wind updates, but you could see how the arrows all blow into the middle of where that low is, but now more than likely it is moving up. We can actually look at our visible satellite picture to see, if we loop it here, how that low might be filling in. It's kind of hard here. I think this only goes back a couple of hours, but you can kind of get the gist for how this whole thing is unraveling. And you see a dry slot over here. We had the brief sunshine and dry slot warm air rolling in, which is probably what amped up our thunderstorms there right around noon. Byron, what do you have now?
Well, we showed you earlier, Jeff, that the truck was flipped on Interstate 64, not too far from Elberfeld. This is just more damage that we're seeing here. And this just could be from the damaging winds, because even with all these severe thunderstorm warnings, the National Weather Service, their criteria said max winds at 70 miles an hour. So we're seeing that. Also saw some wind damage over in Tell City near Candleton, very similar damage there, but no reports of any injuries, but this is up in northern stretches here. And that's that cell you're retracting from about Elberfeld west there of Linville in northern stretches of Ward County.
Okay, thanks, Byron. We're going to look ahead now. What's next, right? We've kind of gotten through the rain. That's over with. We got through the severe threat. That has ended. Now we have winds to contend with, and here's Arden with a look at the winds we can expect here during school release and the afternoon drive here, starting around 4 o'clock or so. Arden.
That's right, Jeff. This is just an estimated look at the forecast wind gusts as we go through the next 18 hours or so, and you can see those wind gusts still upwards of 40, 50 miles an hour, getting into these purple shades here, where we're talking about very windy or even potentially damaging winds on through this afternoon and into the first part of this evening. And then as we get into the later evening hours, especially once the sun goes down after 7 or 8 o'clock, is when we start to see those gusts really letting up. And then as we get into the overnight hours, these winds weaken out completely and will no longer be a concern. But again, as we mentioned before, some trees and things like that have already been weakened by these storms that have moved through. So as this wind continues, we could see additional damage. We could still see more semis turned over, a lot of loose objects blowing around, possibly trees down, power outages still to come over the next few hours. And again, this is separate from a thunderstorm threat. This is just the winds wrapping around on the backside of the system until this low pressure system moves out. We are still talking about very windy and potentially damaging conditions up through about 5 or 6 o'clock at least.
Arden, thanks for that update, and we're going to go back on the radar here to what's happening right now, just with the actual reflectivity, or the rain. And it has all moved out. Our warnings are all out of the tri-state as well. As we kind of do a recap here, we started coverage. I think Arden was on with the tornado warning at 11:30. Was that about right? 11:20, 11:30. We had tornado warnings, and Byron was here too in McLean, Davis, and Hancock and Ohio counties. That moved out, and those warnings cleared at noon, followed up very quickly by the storms that we are now seeing the end of. And during that time, we've had wind damage across Union County around Morganfield, and then into Posey County, Vanderburgh. We've shown you many pictures there of St. Joe in the county and the church there at the corner of St. Wendell Road and St. Joe Road. And we were showing at the time, or at least just prior to that, winds of possibly 115 as estimated by the radar, which is just up the road about 12 miles or so from St. Joe in the county. Then as the storms continued to lift to the north, we had a number of semi-trucks and other vehicles blown off the road or blown over on Interstate 64 and Interstate 69. The line continued then to march to the north through Petersburg, just clipping Jasper, Ferdinand, and then on down into Tell City. It has now moved out, but as we go into the afternoon hours here, we are going to continue to have these very strong winds, and that will continue until dark. And it's important to note here, especially once it gets dark, you're not going to be able to see a lot of the hazards out there. We have flooded roads, which you shouldn't drive through. We have power lines down on some of the roads. We also have tree limbs down, and there's the potential if something was blown loose or you know, a little bit iffy, it could still come down. So the damage portion of this event, not completely done yet. And these winds that we're hearing here at the station, and you're probably hearing at your house, are just going to push that along even further. Today on 14 News at 4, we will have, of course, live coverage out there at St. Joe in the county at the church that lost its roof. We will also have our reporters, they fanned out and been covering it since the 14 News sunrise, the flooding and also the wind damage around the tri-state. We've seen our first tornado situation today, certainly our first severe weather outbreak today as we get into the month of March. That's expected. We will have a special program about severe weather and earthquakes and the eclipse. That's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. You have to watch for the promos on that, but we've been doing quite a bit of work behind the scenes to pull that together to get you ready for severe weather season, which obviously has arrived here in full color this afternoon. The good news here is that for the weekend, we are going to be dry and quiet. Next week, temperatures will rise again to around 70. We have some more rain possible late next week. We're really not starved for rain here. We have picked up probably half a month's worth anyway just this morning at Evansville, and we will have your rainfall totals from around the tri-state on our newscast this afternoon at 4, 5, and 6. We won't be interrupting programming anymore unless we have urgent information or disruptive type of damage out there. But please keep the reports coming in. We rely on those. I think, Byron, did you have one final thought here? Go ahead, Byron.
Well, we have some tree damage in Rockport, near Rockport Elementary, some trees knocked down there. As Arden's already depicted, those high wind warnings are going to go for several hours. So if you can, I mean, the storyline is the wind. So not all of this is tornadic damage. I mean, Jeff, Arden know that sometimes thunderstorms can produce winds 70, 80, up to 90 miles an hour and higher. And that's some of the damage that we're seeing. It's done quite a number on a portion of the area, but we haven't had any reports outside of maybe these accidents of any injuries.
Okay, thanks, Byron. And I think Caroline snuck out. She's got to get the 4 o'clock news put together. So you'll see Caroline and me at 14 News at 4. And of course, Arden will be here as well. We're going to let Byron go sleep. Finally, after a 14-hour day, you're probably ready for it as well. But thanks for your expertise, Byron, and coverage this morning. And of course, Arden here through the afternoon hours. And I will be with you with the weather forecast on 14 News at 4, 5, and 6. Jordan Yaney will be in the field at St. Joe in the county Catholic Church that sustained major damage there. The wind took the roof off the church, threw it across the road, and there's quite a bit of damage out there where a possible tornado was sighted. and move through there just in the northern part of Vanderburgh County. Stay safe. We will have updates as needed through the afternoon. Otherwise, we'll see you on 14 News at 4.
The stars of Daisy Jones and